All right, beta branch 1.5.3 just landed for Bannerlord the other day, and we're going to go through those patch notes. In my typical way of approaching these, I'm going to upfront the knowledge right now here so you can decide if you want to keep watching. This is not going to be a pretty in-depth video because there's not a whole ton to go over. Some of the biggest things though to touch on are that both archery and crossbow have been given their new sets of perks, and we are also going to see added to the game basically these hooked spears which enable your oath sworn and picked warriors for Britannia to act as a phalanx, and I'll show you that after I cover the patch notes. And if you just want to, if that's all you want to see after hearing about that information, you can jump to the relevant chapter that I'm going to put in the timeline so you can just jump ahead. But if you have an existing save, it'll work just fine with 1.5.3. For the most part, this is just pretty much a fix and rebalance patch. It's a very small beta branch. The biggest thing are those archery and crossbow perks being added to the game. The notes even state outright that they're now completed. So hopefully everything 100% works, or at least 90% works. We'll find out as the days go on and as Bannerlord Perks updates their impression of the perks and tells us what percentage of them actually do work. But honestly, that's the biggest portion of those these patch notes. So if that's all you wanted to hear, there you go. That's a minute and a half of your life. You're good to go. Jump back into the game, download 1.5.3. It's stable because it's pretty much just a series of bug fixes and crash fixes and adding these archery and crossbow perks. I'm sure that there are some things in the game that I've yet to see, and people kind of discover those throughout the week of testing the beta branch. So be cautious of that. It might crop up. Something might have occurred like all the towns are starving again or something like that. But from my experience and testing 1.5.3, it's a very stable patch, and you'll be fine with your current saves. Now, for those of you who want to get into it, let's dive down. I've used the highlighting technique that I started doing using the Crusader Kings 3 patch notes to do that here. So pretty much green, in my opinion, is a good positive change. Cyan is a huge improvement or a huge addition to the game, and then red is some form of nerf or what I think is a negative change. So if you see that as you're going through, that is what the color denotation means. Now, first off, a huge portion of crash fixes. For me, none of these really stood out as ones that I'm like, oh, this is the one everyone's having. So if you read through this and you see, hey, this is a really big one that you skipped out on, please go ahead and let me know in the comment section. From what my quick perusal of this was, these seems to be pretty isolated instances that, you know, a fix or crash that occurred after the rival gang leader quest mission, a crash that occurred in the Find Hideout main storyline quest. I had never encountered any of these crashes, so if you have, or they are bigger than I think, please by all means let me know. So save and load, nothing crazy or cool here. This one though is kind of nice. I'm actually going to put a little bit of a green on that one. All deleted, removed, changed items from .xmls will become trash items. Some old saves that used crafting were crashing because they tried to load deleted items. This should now be resolved. And I actually think that's a really good thing. And one thing I've also really liked from patch to patch is the constant tweaking and cleaning up of save files, of the data files of the game themselves, so it's getting smaller, and the save files themselves have been shrunk substantially. So if this is your first foray back into the game, you used to have multiple tens of megabytes of save files. Now they're like 4 megs. So it's just a huge decreasing of that, and it's nice to see them constantly working on that as we go through early access. Some localization here. Excuse me, sorry guys. Some art improvements across the board. Added a new workshop wall scene props. They've been doing this a lot too. Some additional menu UI things to make the game look a little more polished, a little bit nicer. Updated cloth patterns and some mesh details for 2 Battanian chainmail armors. But for the most part, you're mainly looking at improvements on several Empire buildings or improvements on Khazate Village B and C. And I don't really know how to test B and C, so if you guys know, by all means let me know and I can test those and show them off a little bit better. But I'm sure that this is more loading improvements and making sure that the game doesn't kind of mess up from a resource standpoint, and less of like, oh, look at how sharp these cobblestone walls are now. Like, I'm sure it's nothing that crazy. The UI had a little bit of fixes here. Fixed an issue in the army management screen that occurred while closing the pop-up if the player's influence was below 0, and fixed a bug that caused the nameplate of the main party to not appear when starting a new campaign. Now for battles and sieges, we've got two big things I want to highlight. First, a minor position calculation error in the formation AI was fixed. From the last one, you probably saw this. Sometimes when you load in, your certain formations would be cattywampus all over the place. They'd be in a really tight circle facing each other, all sorts of weird little bugs here and there. That has now hopefully been fixed. And in my experience of loading into a few battles, everything seems to be in a good proportionate distance from one another. Oftentimes horse archers would be way off into the distance. So this has hopefully been fixed on all battle maps. Of course, it kind of varies depending on what you're looking at. Now this one, you probably don't know about this. It's kind of minor seeming, but cavalry had some errors on hills, which resulted in cavalry not hitting the enemy at all. This was fixed. Now, with my conversation with the internal beta tester, he was telling me that for the most part, horse archers are an amazing example of the battle AI and how it really executes targets. But it doesn't deal with hills very well because it doesn't look at the z-axis of a hill. So this patch note tells me that they've tweaked that and hopefully fixed that. So you should now be able to see your horse archers perform better when dealing with opponents on or around something with a z-axis, having to move up or over a hill or a large rock or a mountain, whatever it is. Moving down here, though, we see character development added 18 combat-related archery skill perks. This completes the archery skill perk tree. Added 19 combat-related crossbow skill perks. This completes the crossbow skill perk tree. Added stewardship experience gain for heroes that have been assigned as governors. So this is very nice. So if you have any of your characters that are being governors of any of the fiefs that you now own, they will take care of that. Fiefs, sorry. They will now take care of that, and they will get experience doing so, becoming better stewards. This is important here because if you are, say, a Khazate individual and you own an Empire fief, now you can have an Empire character in there, get better stewardship up. So you don't have to rely on certain pools of characters that maybe don't have any stewardship experience for the most part. So you can now make better stewards using that little fix right there, which is pretty nice. Some stuff with clan and party, some kingdoms and diplomacy, nothing too crazy here. Settlement actions mainly had bug fixes. Quest issues, you got 2 new quests added. The Art of the Deal and Ladies Night Out. I know I like to have a nice night out with the ladies. I'll bring the Ben and Jerry's. I'm so bad. Okay, conversation and encounters added a few new dialogues and comments for guards and other NPCs. This isn't actually an important note, so ignore this. But this is kind of minor, but I honestly feel like this is a pretty cool improvement because it makes the time you're spending inside of a city or a village a little bit more lifelike. Right now, I kind of feel if I wander through a city in a kind of a roleplay scenario, I feel like I'm alone walking around with other AI that doesn't do anything, just kind of walks around and says the same canned response. So new dialogue and comment, I think comments is good to kind of enrich the world and make it feel more alive. So I'm all about that. Other here, there was a visual bug showing butter in the inventories is unavailable while players were within settlements. Butter is once again allowed within cities. This is probably the biggest patch note of the patch notes because now butter can make its grand comeback into the cities all across Calradia. Now, moving on, Khan's guard units now have an additional set of arrows instead of their one-handed mace. So you can kind of look at this depending on how you use Khan's guard. Now they're going to be better at archery because they will have an additional set of arrows, but they will use their punching power against other armored cavalry units. So in my opinion, I liked them having that one-handed mace. I thought it was a really cool portion of their versatile kit. Additional set of arrows is nice because they're still amazing horse archers, but that was just my personal opinion, putting that in red. Blunt arrows have issues with inconsistent damage. It won't be possible to purchase them for the time being. So if you're using blunt arrows to try and get a ton of prisoners, you can't do that right now. If you want to buy any more, you'd probably have to use the cheat console to jump into them and pull them out of the inventory. But right now you cannot purchase them if you were to make a new campaign or if you don't already have them in your inventory. Now this one is huge. This one is massive. This is the Phalanx. Infantry can now dismount mounted enemies with hooked guarded spears. Battanian Oathsworn and picked warriors are the troops with this feature. So I put that in green because I think what they're saying here is we'll start here, see how it goes, and then roll this out to more factions. Because spear guards with dismount feature are double huge hooks with fur covering, double hooks, weighted long thorns, singular hook wing, double hook wings, and double thorn wings. So they're probably going to roll these out to more factions with specific units, but they're probably going to test it right here with Battania first. And honestly, we've talked about these guys in our unit guide video. The Battanian Oathsworn are unfortunately pretty garbage for their tier. So this gives them a little bit more punching power and ability to punch up into mounted heavy cavalry. So I'm pretty stoked about this as opposed to unmounted cavalry. But still, I will show you guys this first when we jump into the game because I have it all queued up and ready to go, and it looks really sick. It looks really sick, so we'll show that in just a bit. But you can now use new heroes for custom battles. Heroes with couch lances, longbows, and more are available for your custom battles. So if you want to try out more scenarios with your custom battles, you now have a wider range of heroes to choose from, aside from the 5 or 6 generic ones you had according to each faction. When entering a village, your companions now use battle outfits instead of civilian outfits, which I think is very nice, especially if you're doing family feud quests or anything like that. You now have yourself and all of your companions fully stocked up. So quite nice when it comes to dealing with those quests. And it makes a little bit more sense from a role-playing standpoint, right? You're going into a village, you're passing through. I'm not going to go put on my Sunday's finest for that. You know, these are peasants after all. But Lord's Hall character agent spawning algorithm improvement. These settlements' owners will spawn on the throne, but if the kingdom's ruler is inside the settlement, the ruler will override it. So I don't know why I like this one, because again, I think this is more of a flavor adding situation where you now go into a throne room and the person who owns the throne room is on the throne. And I for some reason that kind of bothered me whenever I jumped in. I was like, well, okay, well, guess no one's here. Or if the king of the realm is there, he's in that throne. So I kind of like that as again, an RP flavor adding thing. Another little thing here too, added cheat commands to the change settlement, loyalty, security, militia, and prosperity. So if you're wanting to kind of tweak around with those and do some testing, you can now do it through the cheat commands. Some not big, but some other multiplayer bugs fixed, some design balances, some visual improvements here, some moving some flags on some specific maps. So that has been kind of tailored and tooled around. But for the most part, that's all the patch notes. There wasn't anything crazy or specifically cool that I wanted to go into in this. Aside from the Phalanx and then the archery and the crossbow perks, that's pretty much all I've got to cover with the notes themselves. So let's jump into the game. I'm going to show off that Phalanx, and then we're going to show off those archery and those crossbow perks. All right, we're in the game, and it's time to talk about the Battanian Phalanx that I got set up here. So I'm using the photo mod to allow me to kind of look around the battlefield, but take a look at this. I mean, I put them in shield wall. They're good to go. They've taken out, that guy's hand is going right through his shield. That looks extremely uncomfortable. But he's taken his, they've all taken their spears out, and they've put them in this really sweet Phalanx, and I love it. Like the second I loaded this in, I was like, yeah, this will do. This is pretty sick. I went up against a legion of Khazate over here, hoping they'd have more cavalry to just charge into me. But let me try this. I'm going to try going to a denser formation, see what it looks like. They're going to move around. And I apologize if this doesn't work as well. I've not done a whole ton of testing with it. Alright, so yeah, they're getting pretty dense here. They're also kind of trying to deal with the fact that they're being shot at. Move forward a little bit more. Get them out of the way. But you can see how these spears are probably going to be pretty devastating when it comes to dealing with large portions of cavalry or with horse archers. Like, I'm really excited to see this thing kind of coming together a little bit more. And you can see how they kind of have their spears back here as the formation's a little bit denser. Oh, you ran right into that, dude. I always love to watch those guys just get shot out from underneath themselves. But I'm really excited for this. Like I said, like this kind of creates that phalanx that a lot of people were asking for when it came to spears. And I see this being used too with some of your two-handed variants of units, like when we take a look at Britannia or with other ones that have those large two-handed spears that they can bring to the table. We should hopefully start to see some pretty impressive phalanxes here. And I think as far as unit choices, Britannian was a good one because, like I said, Oathsworn are pretty lackluster. So I'm excited to see how this really plays out, if it continues to work in the way I want it to, or if it will continue to bug out with certain formations and situations. Like, I have had just cavalry charge into this formation and it's been fine, but it didn't look like the cavalry stopping ability of a phalanx, but still they used their spears and they got the job done. So we'll see if there's other kind of tweaks and weird quirks and bugs to this. But let's jump now over to the crossbow and the archery perks and talk a little bit about those. All right, so here we are with some crossbow and the bow skills, or I mean perks, and we'll take a look at some of these. So across the board, I know there's going to be the big ones that we want to talk about, stuff like mounted crossbowmen and the Horsemaster perks. I don't have a character with 225 bow skill or corresponding crossbow skill to unfortunately check this out to tell you guys if it works or not. So if you do have that and you can test this, please let me know in the comment section so I can pin your comment telling whether or not these two perks work. I tried to check all my characters and I unfortunately don't have anyone with that amount of skill. But let's go through these real quick here. We'll start with crossbow, and overall, there's some pretty sweet perks here. You get ones that will ignore armor, like crossbow attacks ignore armor below 20, or this one, your attacks with crossbow ignore 10% of the enemy's armor. You get a lot of really nice ones too. Terror here have a 20% chance to increase bombardment casualties by 1. This one's pretty sweet though. Pavis, shield on back has a 75% of chance of stopping ranged damage completely. So it's very interesting that they're kind of trying to bring that back around. I know a lot of people want the ability to put the Pavis down in front of you, or at least have your crossbowmen that have it on their back to rotate and face their back to the enemy while they reload. So it'd be interesting to see how this kind of calculates into all of our forces. But we get other things like 2x zoom with crossbows. Your ranged troops gain 1 experience every day, which is going to be really good if you stack this with some of your other perks from leadership. You also get 2 deft hands, double the interrupt threshold when the character is reloading his crossbow, and counterfire. When you have a crossbow equipped, you take 10% less damage from ranged attacks. There's plenty of really awesome perks here for a crossbow. You know, the first couple are going to be the biggest ones. Aiming with your crossbow is 25% faster, reduce reload speed by 25%, Niter, which allows you to increase crossbow damage against mounts by 40%. And I like also a lot of these captain perks have been very solid, especially when we take a look at bow. So bow has a lot of really good ones. Merry Men, increase your party size by 5. That's okay, but of course, obviously, mounted archery is going to be probably the bigger one people go for. Decrease accuracy penalty by 30% while mounted, and ranged troops in governed garrison provide 20% more security. Also, Trainer, every day the party member with the lowest bow skill gains experience in bow. Also, bow equipped troops in your party gain a small amount of experience every day. That's crazy. Where's the one with the... There's one that's like... Oh, I think it's actually in crossbow. Yeah, picked shots. Upkeep of tier 4 plus ranged troops are reduced by 50%. That's majestic. So you get a lot of really awesome perks when you look across the board here. Hunter Clan, increased damage against mounts by 30%. Skirmish Phase Master, you take 10% less damage from ranged attacks. Eagle Eye is 1.5x zoom with your bow. Ranger Swiftness, decrease your reload movement penalty by 50%. Some of these have already been in the game. Obviously, we now get their additional campaign benefit as well as their battle map benefit, and we get more to choose from all the way down here. Salvo is great. Equipped bows do not slow you down. Deep quivers, you get 3+ extra arrows per quiver. So it's great to see now that we've got bow and crossbow and throwing all fleshed out with new perks. That makes the entire top portion of this completed. And writing and athletics also got their new perks too. We still don't have smithing overhaul like they said they're going to be doing in one of their developer diaries, and we still have the entire bottom half of the skill tree. I imagine these are going to be a little bit more intense to jump into for them as far as how they're going to affect the game. So I bet you this is why they're last in line. I would imagine we will probably see the social or the intelligence line next, with cunning absolutely last, because these are just yet to be implemented at all in the game. So we'll see in the coming weeks and months what happens with early access and that cunning line. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. If you can, please help me out with the bow skill here for Horsemaster and for the crossbow skill of mounted crossbowmen. Let me know in the comment section below. And the first to do it, I will pin the comment. If you have experience here and you want to be able to talk about it, look to see, please, if there is a pinned comment on this, because I don't want there to be 18 comments of the same thing. If there's a pinned comment, it's going to be at the very top, and that way you'll be able to find out if this is indeed implemented fully into the game yet, or if we need to wait for it to get quote-unquote turned on, which, as you guys know, I hate. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that kind of fun action. But again, have a good one and take care.